driving test.
So
I think
that's
it was
like,
with a horse.
yeah, it's like 51 years ago when I took my driving test.
I remember taking the classes at Lane Tech High School for driving, and I don't think I had to take the written test, but I think I had to take the driving test.
See, we didn't, they were just starting driver's ed. So actually my dad taught me to drive. I thought he did a very good job. I can parallel park just about anything.
Yeah, that's a lost art, isn't it?
They don't even teach them how to parallel park anymore.
Yeah, I know. They don't require it, right?
No, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's sad. They made it too easy.
Yeah, well, the written test, any idiot can pass that.
Used to be
They dumbed that down.
Yeah, you can get a whole bunch wrong now, and you don't have to get all the signs right. And oh my gosh, it was tougher.
It was
tougher.
We were tougher.
Yeah, it was tougher for us. We had to go there in snow and sleet and hail, and
I used to walk to school in the snow. I had to walk to school in the snow, uphill both ways.
Yes. I remember my dad got a license. When he got a license, all you did was sign up and you got a license. There were no tests, nothing. You just got a license.
My dad used to tell the story of paying 25 cents for his license, and then he went and bought a car. He had never driven a car. But the guy he bought it from told him what to do, and he just did it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Well, that was a long time ago, but
yeah. I don't know when. I'm not sure when it was with my dad. It must have been the 20s.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. My dad was born in 13, so.
Yeah, my dad was born in 12.
See?
Yeah.
And Ron, I want you to know that my granddaughters in Chicago go to Lane Tech.
Awesome. What a great school. Of course, I went there when there weren't any girls.
I know. So did one of our best friends in Rockford.
And I have to admit, I know it's not politically correct, but it made the boys concentrate on school instead of the girls.
It may have. On the other hand, maybe some competition from girls is not a bad thing either.
No, and it wasn't fair because there weren't any technical schools for the girls. So.
Yep.
But.
Well, they have they now are a selective enrollment high school, and they have an early learners program for middle schoolers. And if you test in, you start in 7th grade.
Wow.
So my poor youngest granddaughter started this fall. Well, yeah, right.
Yeah.
She never was even in the school until April.
Well, that was one of the biggest things going to Lane is getting lost inside the school.
Yes. I think they take the middle schoolers and have them a little bit in one area in the beginning. But reality is these kids are taking, they take courses with the high schoolers if they're far enough along in math or languages or something like that. So they do learn the hallways. But that's a big school.
When I went there, it was 5,000 kids.
It still is.
Still is. Wow. Okay. Hi, Bob.
Good afternoon, guys. What school are you speaking of?
Lane Tech High School.
In Chicago.
Oh, okay.
And as Christina reminds me, we are live.
I'll be careful.
Be careful. Don't say anything bad about Lane Tech.
We most assuredly were not.
Hello, everyone. I'm on too.
Hi, Angie. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about the rest of you?
Just fine.
Fabulous.
No complaints.
Glad to hear that. Almost golfing weather for some of you.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
My husband has been.
I have been a couple of times.
Have you?
Yeah.
If I go golfing, it usually involves a windmill.
Trying to figure out the best non-glare spot here.
I've completely moved around the dining room table.
I
Trying
see
to
that you,
find
well,
some-
yeah, I'm in Chicago, and so I kind of gotta figure out the light. Maybe that's,
Yeah.
oh, that's probably better. Okay.
I'll repeat what I told Ron. Anybody who's 75 and over, if you need to go to the driver's license bureau to take a test or get new stickers,
Mhm.
tell the security guard at the front that you're over 75 and they expedite you and they bring you right in.
Oh, well, Steve's been,
Before, I had to wait in line for an hour.
yeah.
Because the only reason I know this is my daughter works there and she told me. And when I got down there this morning at 8 o'clock, the line was all the way down to the end of those buildings.
Mhm.
And so I went up and told him, I said, I'm over 75. And he says, come right with me.
Well,
You
know-
if Steve takes his cane and limps a bit, will he get in?
They also, if anybody with a cane, they'll let come in too.
Okay, because he's way behind and he's gone twice and stood in line until he lost his temper and left. And now he's having trouble with his knees. So he thought maybe while he's using his cane, he'd go
Yeah,
back.
they'll let anybody with a cane, they'll also take, just tell them I have a cane and I can't stand in line.
Yeah.
And they'll bring
Bob
him in.
McKeith is laughing at you, Steve.
I would recommend you not be pushed up in a wheelchair and say you want to get a license.
No. Well, he's been, you know what was, he's been waiting since he was due last July.
Mm.
And they postpone everything. And he has to go because he has to take,
Hi, Bob.
you have to take the test.
Safe.
See me at Lim?
But in the meantime, he was frustrated because I got a new one this spring and they just mailed me a thing and said, just mail your check in, we'll send you the license.
Yeah,
And I
They want
thought, well, this is fine.
Do they want him to test?
I get
No, just eyes.
just always eye test. That was it, the vision
yeah.
test.
Yeah, well, my wife went in with, she had to have a vision test. They never gave her the vision test. And they just, she had to wait through this whole thing just to go through the whole process. They never gave her the test.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
That's,
I would stipulate that I'll wear glasses, you know?
you
Yeah,
always have. You always have worn them. Well,
You
are
know,
we-
I have friends that have gone to Byron and have gone to Belvedere, and we're real pleased with the services in the other areas. They got right in and right out.
real,
my young,
well, yeah.
Yeah,
I
they're not as
remember-
busy.
I remember going to Belvedere. I used to do that
Mm-hmm.
years ago. So maybe that's the deal.
they're
Access-
experimenting with appointments because my son got an appointment in the suburbs in McHenry
Hmm.
County. So they're only experimenting. So hopefully when everybody needs to go, they'll have appointments just like California does.
I never thought the
Well-
lines were all that bad in Rockford. You know,
Oh, they're
I haven't
terrible
been-
now.
yeah. I've-
They're
I've
just
waited-
horrible.
I've waited for a while, but lately, I know when we've driven up, they've been outside. And of course, all lines look long right now with the 6-foot distancing and keeping people outside and,
Well, they can only have so many people in the building at a time too.
yeah. Hi, Sandra.
4:30.
It must be difficult. I'm sure it's difficult for them too. Nobody's in a happy mood by the time they
No.
get through the line.
No.
Unless if you're over 75, then you walk right in. And once it pays to be old.
Where was this
75
line?
inches tall or
We're going to the
75
driver's license bureau, Sandra.
Oh, no, that I went before the COVID experience and that was scary enough, like the day before it shut down.
Oh,
I happened to have to renew that and I was laughing because some people had like quasi masks on. They really weren't cleaning anything. They wanted you to
oh,
put your eyes in those things. I thought to myself later, what was I thinking? But
No,
Well-
they clean the, for when they give you the vision test, they clean it before anybody uses it.
no, now they do, I know, but
Yeah.
at the time, we hadn't really gotten those protocols
No.
down. Remember, this was March, and we were starting to think, wow, this is
No.
gonna start
Yeah.
looking a little scary, and And they, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
and it was like the state ID, remember the new ID was.
The real
required.
ID.
So I was getting
Mhm.
that done. I was like, oh my, it was like the commercial that the sloths, you know, they had one line just to look at your paperwork, another line to you know,
Right.
all you did was snake around. All right.
Yeah, but it was only gonna last a couple of weeks, so it's okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know.
right. That's what we thought.
Hmm. Okay, are
Well, we
we
got a
ready to go
quorum.
here?
Yeah, we got a quorum. It looks like we got everybody. We're live. So we're gonna start the Board of Health Policy Committee meeting for May 12th. And I need approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we have an agenda. It's a very short agenda. I think our discussion before the meeting started may take longer. I don't know. Remote work policy.
Hmm.
And I assume Sandra is going to talk to us about that.
Yes, I am. So this was really coming out as we're preparing, obviously, for the bridge forward to, you know, to phase 5. One of the things I think, you know, well, now it seems like a long time ago, we had also done some alternate hours for the summer, but we've kind of recognized that that we needed to formalize the policy for remote work, and that we do have staff, you know, when you think about it, that could do their jobs remotely, that we have demonstrated that we have different program areas that where it makes sense to do that. Actually, we have, you know, some of our field staff have indicated that, and Todd, you know, supervising over that has indicated they've gotten increased productivity. So we wanted to formalize the process because, you know, at the time that we sent people remote, there wasn't much of a process. We sent them home, here's your equipment, and, you know,
Right.
we'll have you check in a few times a day. So this has been kind of the reflection of the group kind of coming together, putting together some policies. As you would guess, it's probably hobbled together from SHARM to, I looked at the University of Illinois policies because I'm a faculty. So I got to take a look and start with that. Recognizing that not every role or responsibility can be done remotely, but when we are going to approve remote, what are the guidelines and parameters for that? And again, there may be operational needs that would dictate from a departmental level, and it might be, you know, I want to be, we were to have to go into some remote work, you know, again, if our infection rates pick up, or another infectious disease. I mean, I think, you know, I'm being an optimist, so we're planning ahead as we move forward. So this is the reflection of that. LAFA has not had a real chance to review it yet from a legal perspective, make sure we're not violating any time and attendance type activities, but I know, well, but it is draft and the staff did.
She didn't read it.
No, well, again, we kind of we might start moving forward because you think about this, we have about a month before we're in phase 5. Theoretically, the Restore Illinois, and we know we'll have some workers that are going to start requesting it. So we had to get on the move for this. So essentially, some areas about remote work. We're using the term telecommuting and remote kind of as the two kind of wording choices now that are out there for that. We are also indicating that some of our programs and services require regular on-site attendance, obviously our clinical services. But even when you think about food inspections, they still have to go to the restaurant and they may do their documentation remotely, but they have to go to the actual locations for that. Housing, and there are some grant deliverables that will stipulate in person. Others will pull that out. So if they have a requirement on the in-person, then we have to also do that. So it won't be able to be every department or every program within the health department. So this was kind of the criteria to give some parameters around it. So I want to be clear that not every employee will be eligible to do remote or telecommuting type work. There are, you know, circumstances and situations for both program from an operational standpoint and a feasibility standpoint. The other have some other things with employees with medical conditions or disabilities that would go through the typical accommodation request. So for instance, if we had someone that was, you know, having a solid organ transplant was going to be on a, you know, a list or things like that, we would go through the typical accommodation request through human resources. I know yours said human services, but we've already corrected that to say human resources. So that the availability. The other challenge we had was providing equipment. Most of our programs this year allowed us to purchase equipment for remote working circumstances. So employees that were sent from home remotely we allocated the Surface Pros. You approved those through finance multiple times for the WIC programming, double screen, things like that. But I also wanted to make sure that we are not going to be reimbursing anyone for costs associated with their internet access, or at the employee's remote location, that is necessary. Now, we already have a cell phone policy, and you see that already linked to that.
Right.
Situation where we felt like they either couldn't, or more importantly, then the program would then give them a Wi-Fi device, which would be the remote, so that they could work remotely. And we've had to give some of the staff over this time frame what we call burner phones, in the sense of, rather than giving their personal cell, for especially for staff that were doing intake for other things, we're given phones that were really operated by the health department for a short period of time, so that they could do those calling situations. We also wanted to put up the possibility, as we get to smaller footprints in the world, that whether you call it hotel commuting, or that there might be shared workspace. Not everyone will have if we're doing remote working, and let's say we send, for instance, think about, keep half of the contact tracers, and we're going to close up that space and rent it out on the third floor, right? That they would have shared, or what we call, so they might be, one group might be in on Monday, Wednesdays, the other's Tuesday, Thursday, and they would then share desk space at that point in time. So I think that's another thing that we kind of have to start planning for, that the footprint of office buildings may change. And then as we kind of, I'm going to say, decompress afterwards, we don't know what program staff will be retained based on the funding from different programs, being able to have flexibility. Wanted to make it clear that employees who are ill are not assigned remote work. They are on sick time as they were now. So if they were in isolation, just like we did with our isolation quarantine policy, if you're isolated, you're not assigned work. If you're quarantined for any reason, then you could be assigned remote work during that time frame to support activities. But if you were to come ill at any point during that time frame, we would switch you over to sick time. And then we have this kind of like, looking at some of the conversation of definitions for this kind of temporary remote, and I'm going to call it scheduled remote. So for instance, we have individuals, let's say they need to work from home for 2 weeks. They're having, their house flooded, their basement, whatever, or, their caretaker is quarantined. We've had that occur where they're going to have to stay home because their daycare center closed. So that would be a temporary, kind of a short term. There would be a plan for them to remote work, for 2 weeks, if their program allowed for it, right? That's always going to have to be the operational part, which will make some employees, as we know, will probably have some issues with it, but we'll have to explain to them why that is. And then there's scheduled remote. So that might be that scenario that I described, where we're going to have 50% of the staff in the office on AB days, or whatever they call them, and the other 50% on other days. So kind of making sure that we have those definitions. So procedures for the center directors, first of all, they're going to have to determine which programs are eligible. As we've said before, not every program. So if you're doing family planning clinic and you're a nurse in the clinic, you cannot do that job remotely. You have to establish schedules for both in-person and remote, right? So just similar to that. You do have to meet program deliverables and grant objectives for how you're going to do that. So if you're going to do something differently, and I'm sorry, I hate to take this call.
I knew it wasn't my call since Christina muted everybody. I just want to let Lafa know it's hard to break a habit. I don't know if you can see this, but I got a legal pad.
Now I can, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't come up with with the green background.
The background, yeah.
Yeah. There was some confusion at the state and the guard unit, and they just called to tell me that they were not pulling the guard unit tomorrow, just as we roll out for 12 to 15-year-olds, right? So I knew that was an important call. I get this certain state number. Again, am I back on? Okay.
Yes.
And I think the other part is to really, at each of the center levels, is to have that meeting with the staff. You know, are staff interested? Do they want to work remotely? Is it feasible for them to work remotely? And then really setting up as a more formal process. And we've talked about this before when we did the Saturdays and the shortened work schedules during the week, is to try and provide employees with some more flexibility in their work environment. We know that some will really appreciate that as a kind of an added benefit that we really can't always quantify in terms of cost or as a salary benefit, but it is one that we are looking at as a way. We're recognizing that some people will find that to be kind of attractive in the workplace environment. So they have to establish routine check-ins. You can't just, be remote and us never get a hold of you. You have certain work products that will have to be turned in. Obviously, if we lend you any equipment, you see the whole formal process of making sure that if we give you equipment that you have to maintain it and secure it, and you only use it for work-related purposes and return it when you're coming back in. So that would still follow. And then again, kind of going through that process of really trying to establish a more formal procedure for remote telecommuting work. Probably the biggest challenge we did want to make sure, which it was interesting, not a lot of them dealt with healthcare type environments, but we know a lot of mental health providers are working from home, but we wanted to make sure that there would be a discussion with them about how would they secure, maintain confidentiality and privacy if they were doing any client related services. So whether it's remote case management or all of that, we just wanted to make sure that we formalized that. And then if you have a work schedule that says you're on, call from us from 8 to 4, we gave some reasonable expectations about how fast you have to respond if we reach out to you. And there may be times, even if you're on a remote work schedule with advance notice, so like our all staff meeting, or when we get back into our strategic work groups, that we will want people to be in person. And they will be required to come in for that day and make a plan accordingly. So that's where we were at. So what you saw was the policy and then the forms, kind of the agreement. And I know that that's probably where legal will want to look at it. But and then again, the equipment list is pretty standard, but we wanted to formalize that.
Okay, 3 things. Who worked on this policy? Where did you get the basic policy from? Because I know most of the time in government, at least I learned, you'd never reinvent the wheel. You find out someone else did it first, and then you take that and work on it. So where did you get it from? Who worked on it? And I would really hate it if I was LAFA to be called legal.
Oh.
I know we had an alderwoman on the board that always talked about legal while the attorney was sitting there. And I thought maybe their name is legal. I don't know. But...
Oh, well, I mean it from her formal position. So first of all, I reviewed the SHARM policy. I started it with really the group started from our leadership team meeting. And I said, okay, I'll start the draft. I'll take a look at what's out there and then you all can respond to it. So as it usually is a collective work product. And of course, once we start implementing, I'm sure there'll be more, if we go through it. But I looked at what SHARM, which is the human resources kind of resource development, heavily borrowed from the University of Illinois, another governmental entity in healthcare as well. So kind of looking toward those entities. And then kind of, I'm going to say, Ron, at this point, a lot of places are posting them outside. Obviously was not looking at corporate or sales type positions, looked at more environments that were similar to ours in terms of, either some kind of healthcare, in terms of government, and then that accountability piece. Some of them were very short, others were much more lengthy, but this was probably a compilation of those, looking at those, I'm going to say the resources, SHARM, which is the big one for human resources, and then heavily borrowed from the University of Illinois, and as well as, what's the other one? I want to say University of Colorado.
Oh, okay. Questions, comments?
I have one question. Would you anticipate ever having situations where I'm the employee and I don't want to work remotely, but you're going to require me to do that? Well, except if you have to close up because we're on lockdown or something, but
Right. No, I would not foresee that, Pat, for us to
Okay.
force anyone to work remotely. I think only under extreme circumstances where we had to close the office building due to health or life safety issues.
okay.
The idea is we wanted to provide this more as an option when it's appropriate to provide the option.
That was what I thought I understood.
Maybe we could,
Bob, you're muted, so you gotta unmute. Go ahead.
Okay, I know, I assume there has not been any issues since you've had this policy.
Well, we haven't passed the policy yet.
Well,
we've had like an informal, I think
you've been using it.
we've had to live it because we had to go remote at several times. But again, we never really usually closed down where people could not come into the office. But we wanted to formalize it and continuing because as you start to look at, we're preparing for June 14th when phase 5, which is the complete reopening, occurs and we bring everyone back into office environments, like the capacity limits and things no longer apply. And so we wanted to kind of be prepared and forward thinking so that we just don't bring people back in and we have kind of a disruption. And as I said, I think part of it was to look at how do we retain workers in this competitive workforce now, despite the fact that people have had some time away, what are the benefits of having gone through this experience? And I think over the summer months, you've given me authorization and we've gone through the kind of summer hours where they can work 4/10s and every other, as long as we get to that week. And so this was another way to look at, employees were kind of saying they liked this opportunity. Were we going to consider looking at it over the long haul?
Other questions?
No, Ron, I just have a comment.
Yes.
My
Mhm.
granddaughter's been working from home for the last 2 or 3 years. She does medical coding. And I know one of the rules they have that their computer has to be in a separate room from living spaces and she has to be able to lock a door so that if there's kids around, they can't get into her computer. Do we have anything like that with that? That information has to be that our people are putting into their computers. Does any of that have to really be under lock and key?
Well, I think we spell it out in terms of securing and maintaining the equipment, ensure that it's used for work functions. We would also, we have it under the, there's a section where we have to say if there's security, it's under the agreement. Under 4 on page 6 of 8. And then it's maybe, it's just order 4. 6 is, it talks about maintaining and securing the equipment and materials will not be allowed or use the equipment. Then 6 is maintain necessary steps to maintain the privacy and confidential information related to clients. So that would mean signing on and signing off. Typically our computers have lock off. And again, and check with their supervisor regarding procedures or supports that can be implemented. I'm not sure it's feasible or reasonable, Angie, always that they're going to have a separate room for this. I'm not sure that, how would that, we have people that live alone and they could have a kitchen, at their kitchen table or live in a studio, you know what I'm saying? I think that what the intent is to make sure that no one else can access that computer for that, purpose. And that the screens wouldn't be up. So like if we found that, I don't know how families did at this time with, I'm going to say when we had workers remote and their children remote learning, how do you make sure that all of them are able to keep their screens and appropriately done? But I think that's a conversation with the supervisor about where in your space, in your workplace, And because ours are laptops, I think it's a little less than a big, and we're not giving them any printing capabilities. So there's no ability to print any materials out again, because they still have to maintain the HIPAA and privacy piece of it. So for instance, like think about our inspectors right now take their laptops and Surface Pros out, they do their work and they upload it. Now, and again, what you would not want them doing is like having a conversation with their next door neighbor about what they inspected over at, Sandy's restaurant, right? It's, again, maintaining that. They have to sign off on that. If there was a breach, let's say their house got broken into and their laptop got stolen. We've had it stolen out of cars. I mean, we file the police report. We immediately have IT deactivate their sign-ons and logons for that. With so many of our programs now being web-based, it really is another security layer, because if that sign-on is not shared, right, and right now they're not supposed to write their passcode on the top of their computers and all that, or underneath their desk, which, everyone knows where those are located. But those are the safety and security things that they're required to do now. And so we would reinforce that. But I'm not sure, no one brought up, like, should they have a separate room, or, because I'm not sure that would be feasible or reasonable. And that would definitely be an equity concern if I could, because I have more than one room, but Pat couldn't because she only had one room.
I know she uses her bedroom, and when she has company, she locks that door. So there's no access to anything in her room, including the computer. If she has to print anything out personally, she has to come here to my house, and because Grandma has the computer and I have the printer. But other than that, she has to keep everything pretty secured. Just a thought.
I think you've covered it in the agreement and made it reasonable. Obviously, there'd be different circumstances, and like you said, they could talk to their supervisor to try and work it out. I'd hate to say everybody's got to have a separate room and lock it, because that's probably not practical. Other questions, comments?
I was going to say, when I was working at the university, we had both HIPAA and FERPA training that we had to go through, and the requirements, meet those requirements. And those trainings focused quite a bit on things like keeping your computer screen, closing your computer screen when you left your computer, just being careful, because even in the office, there were things that were still private that shouldn't be left open on your desk. So I would assume that our employees have some amount of requirements that speak to that too.
We have annual training on that, and that is one of the areas, we go over. And again, we do have single sign-on in the sense of you have to be able to get into your screens. First of all, you have to be able to log in, right? You have a code from IT and then you have other codes to get into all of the secured systems. So if I'm doing a WIC encounter, I have a separate sign-on for WIC. If I'm doing IDPH, if I have to log into any of the iCare or the immunization systems, Qualtrics. So there are another layers, but that doesn't mean, and again, we also want employees to understand that if you're going to be working from home, you have an obligation and a requirement to secure any information, which I'm going to say people already document from home. So this just really kind of formalizes that procedure. I mean, I think probably when we were kind of sending people out into the, to their homes to take shelter and work from home, we probably didn't have as many of these things in place to formalize it. And now we really want to move through that process of formalizing it. They have to report breaches. I mean, we do now, if someone says, and we do report we do a police report and we do an IT report, if equipment gets stolen. Most of these websites now, you cannot download information. They're locked from downloading from those sites. Now, that's not to say, but the idea being that, we're going to have to take some reasonable methods and secure, which can happen in an office environment as we well now, too. And IT pretty much locks us down about how long our screens can be up without the beautiful blue screen showing back up that you've been away from your desk too long.
Anything else? Well, then we,
what do we do now? What I
well,
was
we
gonna
need
ask.
either a recommendation, we need a motion to recommend to the board approval, or we need a motion to recommend not approving the policy to the board, whichever. And I would suggest that the recommendation, if that's what you're going to do, has the caveat that LAFA gets to look at it and approves it. And
Absolutely.
if she has any changes that are needed, then we need to deal with that Tuesday.
That would be the recommendation I would make. I would be happy to make that motion. That we recommend approval with the qualification that LAFA gets a chance to look at it.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion?
And
All
we,
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
and we
With
definitely
policy.
want LAFA or legal to review it because we want to make sure. And I've already too, it's also been shared in concept with HR because we kind of said this is coming. I think it's not the only department, it's coming.
Oh, sure.
I'm sure.
Do we need an executive session?
You do not,
All right, I've got some additions that I'd like to ask about.
okay?
We have not had the open meetings training for a while. I know there's a pandemic and everything's going out the window, but we haven't had open meetings training. We haven't had elections. We haven't had renewal of board members' terms. Mine was up, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. Pat, you were probably even before that.
I know that I am up, and the county board chairman's assistant called me a while ago to double check who was still on the Board of Health. So I
Oh,
think
wow.
I think they were trying to kind of get their stuff straightened out. But she did note that she had found some paperwork that indicated that several of us had expired terms, and she asked me what usually happened then.
Yes, you.
And-
That's interesting.
And
It'd
I
be nice if she
said,
called
well,
Sandra, you know?
Well,
I don't.
LAFA, you want to go ahead? Because I know you've
Hey.
also had meetings with them.
Right. So Pat, you're right. The chairman is in the process of reviewing everything since he just got in. So he did ask me what the qualifications were for the Board of Health members and things of that nature. So
Sure.
it is a work in progress. So
There's so
Well,
much to get
one of the-
organized.
Oh, yeah. One of the qualifications, if you have to be as good looking as the rest of us.
Or a background manager.
It's not hard.
First of all, you just provide them with the list of all of your terms and who need reappointments.
Mhm.
We provided the bylaws as well as the kind of the committees of the various boards. And he's already moved on looking at one of the members, replacing one of the members, not replacing, but one of our vacancies, filling one of the
Sure.
vacancies.
Yeah, we've
So-
got several vacancies.
Right, he's very much aware of that, Ron, and
Okay.
moving forward with
All
that.
right. I just, I know stuff gets passed by when you have emergencies going on, but some of this stuff really should keep going.
Oh.
And also, it's been probably 5, and I'm not saying we have to do this now, but it's probably been 5 or 6 years since we looked at all the executive session minutes to
The
see if
closed
they can be,
Right, if they could be redone, and so we
yeah,
on the list as well.
okay. I just want to remind everybody these things still need to be done at some point. All right.
Ron,
Yes.
I'm coming up this Thursday night. My name's coming up to reappoint me to the health department. And then it'll be voted on at the next meeting. So I do know he has taken the time, like they said, in going through all this, because our last person didn't look at anything. And if it would have been his way, he would have replaced all of us. So it's better this way that he didn't do anything and that our new chairman is working on it the best he can with what he has had to work with.
Well,
So he'll-
I don't know if I could have handled him replacing me because that would have been a big pay cut. So I don't know.
I know. Wouldn't that have been terrible?
It would have been terrible.
Now,
Yeah.
we're in an open meeting now, so I really want to make sure that everyone understands that our Board of Health members are not paid. And I met actually with the chairman and Karen on February 25th to go over all your appointments, what sectors you represented, the language that initiated the Board of Health. And I know LAFA got it before that time frame as well, was working with them. So I know they're moving through on those appointments.
Good.
So that's, and we will send out the link to the very dry, but absolutely necessary Open Meetings Act training so that you can all renew your Open Meetings Act. I'll have Christina send that out.
I do know that one thing never stops. We get the financial report every year that we have to do.
Oh, yes.
You know, all that money,
state.
all that interest we have in the Board of Health and all they do.
Those
I get that.
statements-
I get that from every committee that I'm on, and even the county board, I get that.
I was thinking someday they'll get to a true single sign-on in the state of Illinois that you would go in and say, if you get it, so it would cover all of the places that you are, whether it's home county, the county you work in, the board.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have done 6 of those along with, and Ron, I lay at the open meetings. I think we've done the training on harassment. You must do it for every board you're on. So
Yes.
it's the same training too. And why
Mhm.
can't I do it? And not that it isn't important. Trust me, I get that, but it's, I'm like, can they change it a little bit for at least, so from year to year,
Mhm.
it's the same,
So if you have to do the harassment training for every board you're on, would that be considered harassment?
Yeah, it would. That's why they tell you that if you have the certificate, would you please send it to us?
They've gotten better at that now. But and then if you have a license in the state of Illinois, many of us have to do the same training for the license renewal.
Oh, yes.
So
We did.
but and again, there's other ones now too that they're doing. So
Yeah.
I get that, but we certainly can send out the links. I'll send that out to the and President Williams can make everyone aware that they're going to get their OMA link. And I'm sure that the chairman's office is reaching out to individuals to kind of feel you out about whether you want to continue your work on the term has expired. I think that's an important conversation for them.
Do we have any information about whether we will be going into in-person meetings when you move to the next stage? Because I wasn't sure about the open meet. I thought the Open Meetings Act changed to the use of Zoom was temporary.
It's still in the executive order. We don't, again, he did not, the governor did not reissue issue a new executive order with the bridge phase. We kind of have been watching to see if that's going to happen. I know, I'm guessing the state's attorney's office is watching for that as well. Our plan would be, as we bring Maple back, June 14th is our bridge date. So we would expect that we would go into full in-person in June.
Okay. Well, that means I got to show up with decent pair of clothes on instead of pajamas, right? Gee, that's terrible.
But I think that that's going to be an interesting conversation because I don't know how far it's going to move or if the governor's office is going to completely under the Opens Meetings Act, because really, when you think about quorums and participation as really most of our board meetings throughout the pandemic, with the exception of the months we did not hold it, we had not had a quorum. People
yeah, it's really easy to get a quorum for everything with Zoom.
And so there are benefits, but there are also downsides. And so, making sure the public has access to be able to participate, all those concepts need to be addressed. So
right.
I know they're doing a hybrid at this county board, right? And they're continuing the hybrid.
Yes.
I would think that the public has a better shot at seeing what's going on with Zoom meetings than in-person meetings.
You're right about that, but on the other hand, us board members, we need to also be able to communicate with one another on a one-to-one basis. I miss that. I just ran into one of our board members this past week, and he's brand new, and I have never personally seen him. And so it will be nice that even with our hybrid, I'm still on doing Zoom at home. But yes, in public, we have more public watching us. It's amazing how many people go in and watch us.
Mhm.
We have to have, even with on Zoom, we still have to have the open meetings agenda too. And as Ms. Vaughn will tell you, that when we vote on things, we each, for everything we vote on, we have to have every member say yes or no. We just can't do it like everyone says yay or no. We all say no. It has to all be recorded who said what. So they're still on a basis of doing the Open Meeting Act one way or another. And it's, so if you do pass it and you're on other committees, then just tell that committee person, I passed it and I'll send you my, and I think that's what they can do. Can they not, Ms. Vaughn?
When you say when they pass, what do you mean?
When I get a certificate saying I passed the Open Meetings Act, and I'm on 5 different committees, that then as each committee asks me to, do I have it? I can send it to them.
Oh, yeah, your certificate.
Just like the harassment. The harassment's the same thing. I don't have to do it 5 times. As long as I have my certificate, I can just email it to each person who needs it.
Correct.
Okay. Anything
Thank you.
else? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are through.
Thank
We're
you.
still live, so be careful.
See you next week.
See you next